Hey everybody, this is Rob and Jordan, and we are back for Archangel Inc. Live number 27. Good evening, Jordan, from the United States to Portugal. How are you?
Good. How are you doing tonight, Rob?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right.
Good.
Yeah, looking forward to chatting with folks here a little bit this evening. We are going to be discussing some resources that we have personally found helpful for building your authorship business, your writing business, and those will kind of span the gamut from general business development to kind of writing and authorship specific, as well as leadership and personal development kind of things. So yeah, do you have anything that you'd like to add as we get started here, Jordan?
Nope, I got nothing, but I'm excited for this. Let's do it.
Okay, cool. So let me pull up our messages here. And I did see our notes. I did notice last time these notes do display across both platforms. So this is streaming simultaneously to Facebook Live on the Archangel Inc. page, as well as the YouTube page here. So these should be visible. If anybody has any technical issues, let us know. We're always looking to improve and build on it. But I think this is going to work pretty well. All right, so tonight, great content for your authorship business. And first note, many people find themselves with additional free time these days. Obviously, we know what's going on in the world, and we're fortunate as content creators, as independent business people, as authors, to have some additional opportunity to continue working on our craft. This isn't something that requires us to be out and mingling with people. This is in fact usually a pretty personal craft. It's a lot of free time, or rather focus time, just for yourself. And so my thought was that we'll just kind of go over some things that we found helpful and discuss them and see where that goes from there. And of course, we're always happy to field questions, field comments, thoughts, and welcome any recommendations from anybody out there who's watching, either on the live stream or in the recorded video afterward. All right. So how can we find inspiration and insight for building our business? So that's kind of why we're doing this. There's a lot of news and information out there, some of which can be a little bit stressful. But I wanted to focus on things that can be positive and helpful and constructive. And so that's what we're working on. So let's go over several books, podcasts, and YouTube channels in specific to help learn and grow. So the format that I was proposing, or I was thinking of, Jordan, and I would like to propose, is we will each alternate our selections, and then each of us will have a chance to ask the other two questions, as kind of framing questions, and branch out from there. The first question that I am going to ask is, or that we are going to ask, why do you like this selection for authors and entrepreneurs? What value does it have for you in that capacity, and might it have for others in that capacity? And then number two, what would benefit, who rather would benefit most from this? So who's the target audience? Who's the ideal individual who is going to listen to it, to read it, to engage with it, and kind of be positioned to make the most of it? So we can jump in, and
I accept your proposal. Let's do it.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Jordan. So my first thought, or my first submission here is from you, Jordan. You have the first volley, and that is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Tell me about it.
Cool. This is a book that has been on my list for too long. Mm-hmm. I had seen too many people recommend it over and over again, and I just finished reading it just about a month back.
Oh, cool.
Really good book for authors, entrepreneurs, anyone that's really trying to do anything themselves outside of a normal, 9-to-5 work. And I think it could even apply there as well. But it's a really cool business book. I don't know a lot about the author. It might be cool to look more into history-wise and who Napoleon Hill really was. I'm ignorant to a lot of history and those type of things, but I know he's the type of business guy that seemed to know everyone. He knew presidents and he just knew a ton of people.
Right.
And basically based his book off of a lot of his own personal research. Lots of good stuff in there. It is a little bit, in some ways, it's difficult to read. Number one, because it's a really long book. Number two is because it's older. It's it wasn't just written last year. It doesn't have the current day kind of nomenclature and stuff. It has some older stuff in there, but which was fun. It was fun for me to read that because I'm very, very unfamiliar with that. And I like that too. I like reading stuff that I'm not totally familiar with. It challenges me a little bit, and it was good. It got me thinking.
Well, one of the things you mentioned that I thought of was, I forget what resource it was, but I read recently that the difference or the divergence between kind of academic and lay writing has kind of shifted over time. And it used to be the case that's a little bit different like it is today. Now, there's a more discernible difference between kind of academic texts and then, popular texts. And maybe that's just by virtue of the fact that there's more content out there and, more casual readers. But back in the day, maybe perhaps in this context, he was kind of writing for more of a blended audience, and the difference between something that was meant for, I don't want to say insiders, but for a more sophisticated audience, maybe, and a popular audience was a little bit different, and it was a little narrower, and so it might just be a little bit more difficult and demanding from the reader compared to way back then. I wanted to mention too, we got a message from Jim Raj 68. Hi guys, looking forward to this. Thanks for doing it. My pleasure, Jim. Thank you for tuning in. We are happy to have you here.
Good deal, Jim. Yeah, thanks for stopping by.
Cool. So the second question that we're going to be asking, Jordan, who would benefit most from Think and Grow Rich?
I think I kind of already mentioned this. If I had to pick one group, one person, I would think it's really a good fit for someone that is trying to find what their passion is.
Okay.
To find their number one thing. If you already know, it certainly could help you on that path. It could really solidify your desires and give you the motivation to see that through. But I see it as really a book for someone that's like, I'm not sure what I want to do. He gives a lot of stuff in there that's helpful, and just getting your mind prepped to be like, to be convinced, like, hey, like make something of your life and pick your one thing. You don't have to, I don't know if he says this, but this is my opinion, you don't have to stick with the one thing if you end up wanting to pivot and you decide something else. But he just talks a lot about the importance of, if we want to have success, we need to at least know what that looks like. How are you going to define it for yourself? There's a lot of good stuff in there. So yeah, I would say for someone that is in that stage of just in the intro stages, just trying to figure out, how to move forward.
Right. So would you say it is one of his focuses is helping his readers kind of get clear, and that clarity can give energy and motivation and kind of an engine behind kind of success in their chosen field?
Yep, definitely. Yep.
Right on. Okay. Was there anything else that you wanted to share or mention on Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill?
Nope. Just that I'm glad I finally broke down and read it, and I got to get through some of these other books that are on my list as well.
Right.
If everyone is recommending a book to you, it's one of those things. You may not end up liking the book, but you should at least read it to figure out what everyone is talking about. There are books out there that I'm like, I don't really care that everyone likes that. There's been books I'm not a huge fan of, but if everyone else is talking about it, it does. I mean, it's a book. It's not going to take you too long to get through it. Just check it out and form your own opinion. So I finally decided to do that. So
cool. Right on. And it was well received, it sounds like. So
yes. Yep.
Good deal. Sometimes there are books that are, kind of just in the vernacular, and particularly in the arena, the business arena that you might find yourself in, that people kind of repeatedly reference. And so just being a conversant, party in those conversations can be helpful, even if it doesn't, move the needle all that much for you and your own kind of personal development or business development. So let's see. All right. I am up. The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. Okay. So that's my first recommendation. And to give a little context, Tim Ferriss is a pretty popular author, and he's done a number of books, and they've kind of varied on that 4-hour theme. I think he has the 4-Hour Chef and the 4-Hour Body, and a couple of other things. And he's cool. He's got a pretty successful podcast as well, and a number of pretty high profile guests, and even put together a a fairly big book, I think called Tools of Titans, based on, interviews. And he has some kind of excerpts of transcripts from his podcast and just conversations with people. Anyway, so that's a little context to Tim Ferriss. I'm trying to remember what his initial business was, but he's kind of I would say sort of a digital entrepreneur. He's run a number of businesses, started and developed them. The idea of this book, and the reason why, I think it's kind of cool, is I don't really like the title, and I don't really like the idea that the title implies,
Yeah.
The reality is, I don't think he actually really works a 4-hour work week. I don't think he actually, if you look at his schedule,
No way.
he's working, 10, 12, 16, or he's busy, let's say 10 or 12 or 16 hours a day. But the mindset shift that entails, like, all right, how can we outsource, make efficient, and really hone in on what's most effective in our business? That's kind of the key takeaway that I got from it. And if you think about work not as any sort of productive activity, but maybe the stuff that's a little bit challenging and a little bit difficult, then the 4-hour work week is, I can sort of understand where that comes from. It's like your goal is to pare down that stuff that is intractable and causes hiccups and challenges for you. Pare that down to the minimum, to whatever extent that you can. Find some assistance, whether that's hiring virtual assistants or developing automated systems or whatever it is, to send those speed bumps down to the bare minimum. And then from there, you can really focus on the things that are most interesting, most exciting, and kind of most passionate for you, and that can really drive your business to the next level. And I think that's that's kind of the spirit of it, and why I like it. The idea that you're just going to sit back, work for 4 hours a week, take in 10,000 a week in passive income, and then go geo arbitrage and kick back with some Mai Tais on a tropical beach. Probably not true, and I think it kind of misses the point. For me, reducing work makes sense in the context of work that you don't really like or don't really enjoy, but work that actually has meaning to you, that is an outgrowth of your own kind of effort and imagination and so forth. That's really engaging. One of the posts that we had on our Facebook page recently was about the kind of dreariness of the idle man, or I forget the term exactly, but it was like, basically, we find meaning and purpose in work. And so to the extent that that's how you're thinking about work, I'm not trying to minimize that, but that's not how a lot of people think about it. And so it requires a little bit of reframing and putting it in terms that are as stark as this, is like the 4-hour work week. Wow, wouldn't that be cool? And then you kind of start to reconceptualize everything you think about your productive activity or your creative activity. That's why I like it.
Cool. Did you answer your 2 questions there?
No, please. I left them open, so I'm ready. I'm ready, Jordan.
Good deal. Okay, so authors and entrepreneurs specifically, how would they benefit from this book? And then also who would benefit most? And before I forget to mention it, after you're done, Jim asked a question that we can get to. And I saw it. I've been thinking about it, but just want to mention it before I forgot.
Perfect. Thank you. So yes, I did sort of roundaboutly get to some of those, just like I think you did last time. But authors and entrepreneurs, I think the biggest benefit is kind of like what we talked about last week. Start to figure out what your most important tasks are, and then delegate off the ones that aren't. If there's something that's causing a bottleneck in your workflow, is there some way that you can send additional resources there and really leverage your highest value activity? So that's one of the key takeaways that I got from this. It's I remember one of the things that he discusses. He gave latitude to one of his assistants in a company that he was building to, if there was an issue that required a purchase, if the purchase was less than $100 or a couple $100, like, hey, I give you the authority to do that. You don't have to run everything by me. I don't want the fact that we need a new stapler to stop us from working. Like, don't try and track me down to do that. Like, it's fine. I give you the authority and latitude to make those decisions. If there's something higher tier than that, then maybe at that point get me involved. But yeah, so why Oh wait, let me see my the second question. Who would benefit most from this? I would say people who are kind of stuck in that kind of trade your time for money mentality. Just thinking about how can I build value in a way that doesn't require my active involvement, and how can I be creative and broad-minded and kind of lateral in my thinking about that. I think that's really cool and really valuable. The other party I would say in a way that can benefit from it is the would-be entrepreneur who has those dreams of just drinking Mai Tais. I think it does provide a little context. I mean, he's definitely, I wouldn't say he's pie in the sky, but he is optimistic and gives you a sense of possibilities, but remains reasonably grounded enough that you're not going to go in and expect the world to kind of just unfurl its red carpet at your feet just because you've heard that some people work 4 hours a week. I think he can give a little bit of context to that and help. So all right.
Yeah, and this is, Rob, this is just why I love books so much. I think reading is one of the most powerful things we can do. You think about what you can learn from Napoleon Hill, who I don't remember when the book came out, but it was a while ago. And then the newer book by Tim Ferriss, and kind of the different, it's a different culture that they're both writing in, but I'm sure there's parallel truths there. And it's just really cool. Once you start reading, you can start to learn those truths and garner those truths for yourself as you're reading through those, and can kind of compare and contrast. And okay, how does this really work? Does this really still work? How is someone else utilizing it? And it's just it's so cool what you can learn from not really knowledgeable people. I had someone the other day kind of refer to it as maybe what exactly do you say? Like basically standing on the backs of giants, kind of. I think that's the expression, possibly. But really cool idea. Like, hey, someone's putting all their knowledge into a book. It's not going to take you that long to read it. Hopefully it's some of their best stuff. And then you can really start to get that from a lot of people. And it's just powerful.
Yeah, I agree fully. One of the things that made me think of is I often loved, in school, reading kind of debates, and kind of the great debate series. I had a teacher, I don't know if we ever got around to reading them because I don't recall actually the content of the argument, but there was, he's like, all right, so I want us to read a book on, I think it was about, kind of like, I don't know, like social change or something, but it was the tyranny of structure and then the tyranny of structurelessness. Cool. It was like a counterpoint. It was like an article like, hey, when we have these rigid structures, it kind of forces things into a predetermined box. And this can be, not loose and free flowing enough to really make the most out of what we're trying to do. And then the counter argument was something to the effect of, yeah, well, when you don't have structure, you end up just having a recreation of unspoken dynamics, and the loudest person in the room may end up kind of having their way because everybody else is kind of just referring to it, and there's not a structure there in place to kind of curtail the excesses of people who would want to do that. So when you're reading books from some of these authors, it can be really useful to read like the 4-hour work week, and I don't know if there's something like the 90-hour work week, but something for people who are really just workaholics and like grinders, and that's what they believe in, because they're probably actually based on some of the things that I've read and experienced, there's probably actually a lot of overlap between both of those people, but just different ways of thinking about it, different ways of approaching it, and then different insights and perspectives on it. And they can kind of add value and create some sort of syncretic experience for you to, take a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and build something that kind of resonates with you and can work for you. Just like, again, last week, we had all those different tools that we discussed, different ways to be productive working from home. Different books can offer different mindset tools or perspective tools to shift and adjust and utilize and employ as it makes sense.
Yep.
Cool. So we've got a question here from Jim. Let's pull it up. Jim, do you think it is necessary to read books that are actually written or ghostwritten by actual successful people, that is with a proven track record? Jordan, I'll let you answer that first, and then I'll share my thoughts.
Sure. Jim, thank you for this question. I think that is really, really, really good question. And no, I don't think it's necessary to read books only written by people that are successful people and experts in that field. I mean, obviously you don't want to read a book by someone teaching you how to fish that has never fished ever in their life. That, definitely it's important to have at least, some success. But I think it depends on what you mean by successful. Do you mean someone that, is a millionaire and already has this stuff, already has everything worked out? I mean, I think that's a facade, because most people don't have it all worked out. Even a millionaire, that has done a lot of good things in his life isn't someone that's going to be able to give you the answers to everything. I think it's going to come down to your own judgment with that. I mean, I think that's why, it is harder to read books from newer authors for me, and I think for other people as well, because I am spending time, I'm committing some time to this person. I'm hoping that they have some wisdom, but how do I know? And I think that's tough. I mean, definitely when you're getting book recommendations from people, and I think, if multiple people are recommending the book to you, and I will admit, Rob, the 4-Hour Workweek has been recommended to me by far too many people for me to admit that I have not read it. That's going to be added to my list. But books like that, I know that I should read that book, and I'm going to make that a commitment to read that book this year. I think it's on my list somewhere. If not, I'll put it on it. But yeah, that's kind of what I think. Rob, what do you think about that?
Yeah, the other part to Jim's question was, and if so, how successful? So, how successful those people need to be before you kind of give them credibility or pay heed to what they're saying. Yes, it's tricky. I do think there's some importance to having people who have experience and knowledge and insight to offer. It was framed this way to me. I'm trying to remember where I heard it, but I like this. And they said, look, when you're writing a book, your authority comes from authority and credibility come from one or both of two places. One, experience, or two, research. And so you don't have to be a I don't know, like a business mogul to speak about, starting a business. It can help, and the things that you learn along the way can be really kind of novel and useful and helpful. But it's not strictly necessary. It could be kind of the approach that we took again last week, like, hey, here's a bunch of different ways, a bunch of different things. I did a little bit of research, and here's what I've consolidated. Here are the differences and discrepancies between what this person says and this other person says, and here's my take on it. When you become a knowledgeable, well-researched individual, then you do have some authority and credibility to lean on, even if you don't have that personal experience. So, personally, I think that the best way to utilize these stories from successful people is if you find motivation and inspiration from it. A lot of people find that they really like those biographies or memoirs or that kind of genre, and they find it easier to read and learn about it, learn things based on that. But they aren't necessarily going to read the books themselves that these people are writing. They might want to actually know, like, hey, what the heck happened, in such and such person's life, and that can be helpful. Like, oh, I'm not really interested in, I don't know, like the story of the Dallas Mavericks, but maybe I like to hear about, Mark Cuban and, what happened with him, how he did what he did. So anyway, that's, that would be my thought. And
yeah, I think just not to belabor that, but I really like the question a lot, because it is a great question. I think you really have to vet the author as well. If the author that you're reading from is writing in the personal development or fitness and health, and they are obviously not working on that themselves, if they're obviously not in it, if you see a picture of them and maybe they're overweight, and that doesn't mean they're not going to be able to write a good book because of what you just said, Rob. But that just speaks to that instant credibility for what, for better or for worse, we do judge people. We judge a book by its cover. We're going to judge someone. And do I really want to read this book about, 30 days to fitness by someone that isn't practicing it? And it doesn't mean the book is necessarily going to be terrible. It could be the best book out there, but we may not read it. And that's just, that's the question. And then maybe that's obvious, but it is, it does depend a lot on that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I like that. What's the expression? It's never trust a fat trainer or a skinny chef. Um, you
Oh
know,
yeah, I've heard that. I like this too. Yeah.
and that speaks to some degree of truth. Obviously, like you said, you kind of determine it on a case by case basis. But at a glance, you want to see that the person that you're speaking to has some competence in their field of expertise, and there are different heuristics that we use to kind of make that determination. Sometimes they're not right, but oftentimes they are, and that's why they become heuristics.
Yep.
Anyway, great question, Jim, and appreciate that. Yeah, he mentions that he's working on a book along the lines of In the Company of Rich People, based on observations ranging from tycoons, including millionaires and royalty, their behaviors, mindset, and habits. So good luck, Jim. That sounds like a really cool project. And one thing I'll mention actually that might be of interest, and maybe you've seen it, Jim. There's a documentary called Born Rich that I watched years ago, and it was directed by an alum of my school. I went to NYU, and the Gallatin School in particular. And this person was, I think, Jamie Johnson, the one of the heirs to the Johnson and Johnson family. And so he interviewed a lot of other pretty wealthy people, children of fairly wealthy people, and including some royalty and then business tycoons and that kind of thing. But I really like that documentary. That was kind of fun. So if you haven't seen it and you're researching along those lines, Jim, feel free to check that one out. Okay, so that was great. Jordan, part two. Next option for you. We've gone over the 4-hour work week. You've selected How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Tell me about it.
Cool. Fantastic book. I'll answer the 2 questions real quick on this one. This is one book that a lot of people recommend. I have read it and I'm going to read it again this year. It really impacted me a lot. But why do I think it's important for authors and entrepreneurs? We have to know how to get along with other people, and not just get along so that we can get by, but really get along and benefit from that, so that they can benefit from us, we can benefit from them. There's just that good mutual relationship, and there's a lot of good albeit very simple strategies he gives, but he does give a lot of really interesting and timeless analogies that just, it goes to show you how much remembering someone's name can help. That's just one of his examples. And it's an easy thing. Yeah, I'm not good at remembering names. Well, are you not good at it, or have you not made it a priority? Well, you probably haven't made it a priority, but it really can help to remember someone's name. So who would benefit most from it? I think I think it really helped me as someone who is really spent a lot of my life not necessarily trying to break out of the introvert shell, but just to get better at interacting with other people. I see some people just are so natural at interacting with other people, and some people aren't going to be as natural. They're going to need a book like this that can say, okay, break this down for me. Like it's not obvious, it's not easy to me. Help me out. And it just has helped me really, value people, and just to be able to, in my mind, I have the hope and the mindset, like I really want to get back to this person, but that's not always easy to do when you're, kind of stuck in a conversation. You're like, oh, I want to do the right thing, but I don't exactly know how to do that. It's helpful to have a book like this to kind of talk you through that.
Yeah, no, I like that. And there's, I haven't read it fully. I've read excerpts of it, and obviously, kind of like you, it's kind of in the ether for a lot of people who are interested in business development. And I was involved in public speaking group, and this information is really helpful. It's like you said, when you are not a natural extrovert, let's say, or socializer, or influencer, or whatever, it can give you the kind of the reverse engineering tools. Like, okay, so what is somebody actually doing in the context of this conversation that's working? What's the internal logic behind it, and then how can I start to make sense of that and then reproduce that across a wider variety of contexts? Because again, for somebody who's always been a great singer, they're not necessarily going to know the mechanics of vocal delivery, or projection, or placement of their tongue relative to their palate, or any of those things. Yep. But somebody who trains at it and works at it, they may be able to approximate or even exceed the skills of the natural, because they're able to kind of reverse engineer it. The other example that I can think of, because I'm a basketball fan, a lot of people point out that the great players aren't always the best coaches. The best coaches are often, kind of sometimes they're starting level, but sometimes kind of bench level players who just they get to where they are even on the bench, not because of a preponderance of natural skill, but because of some other insight or something that they bring to the game that makes it easier for them to kind of communicate, one, to the people who are really good and see everything all at once, and who can kind of do everything on the court, but then maybe also to the people who are, the 8th and 10th and 12th man, who you still want to integrate and get productive play out of. And yeah, there's, I'm trying to remember some joke. It was like, can you imagine if Michael Jordan's a coach? He's like, yeah, you just jump in the air, float around, move, twist, and then do a double pump dunk. Like, what's the big deal? It's like, the big deal is, just easy, real easy. Of course, for him, maybe it is, but for everybody else, maybe not so much. So figuring out how to communicate and bridge that gap, and kind of translate what the effective habits are of naturals into something that everybody can access. That's kind of the spirit of these guides, and I think that's really cool.
Yes.
So, Jim also asked, can we include the links here, the social media links? Yes, we will definitely do that. We'll include them. Yep. I'll include all of these notes down in the description below, and we'll do that both on YouTube and on Facebook. So thanks, Jim. So let's see. Next one, I'm up again, and that is Early Retirement Extreme by Jacob Lund Fisker. So this is a little bit of a cheat. The book I am familiar with and have read through, not all of it, probably a third or so of it, but he's got a website. And the thing I really like about him, he is, I believe, an engineer by training, and he worked as an engineer for several years, and retired more or less early by, I think, his mid to late 30s or so. But the way he did that was by having an extremely frugal lifestyle. People talk about like living like you did when you're a college student, where we only have a few $100 a month to get by, and you minimize all of your luxuries, and you kind of just maintain a pretty frugal lifestyle. You're not buying McMansions and pools and I don't know, whatever things that people often spend their money on as they become a little bit more affluent later. So what he did was, just kind of maintain that pace. And I think he was able, even as his career developed, to put away something like, 60 or 80% of his earnings. He taught himself a little bit about investments, and, he can more or less live off of that. The reason I like this book and recommend it for authors and entrepreneurs is it's very extreme. He's aware of that. It's in the title. Most people are not going to do that. But the bigger metaphor is kind of tightening your ship. And, imagine you find yourself in a ship and it's got lots of holes. If you plug those holes, those places where you're expending a lot of money or a lot of your resources, then you don't need as much on the ship to stay afloat. You don't have to paddle your like one bucket after another out into the water just to remain solvent. And as business people, oftentimes we're going to have to do that. It's important to be really mindful about what we're spending and not take for granted any of the resources that we have. And so it's just been helpful for me. Like, okay, are there things that I could be doing that are going to make my long-term future a little bit easier? Kind of just the marshmallow experiment, like delayed gratification, longer time horizons. How can I plan for that while at the same time, really working, focusing on a high quality life now. So one of the things, for example, that he mentions is, he, I think, only had like basically a couple sets of clothing, but like his boots were like top end, like hiking boots, like super comfortable to walk in. They could be resold. They were several $100s when he bought them, and they were great. Like the quality of him wearing that versus 10 different lousier boots, over the course of several years, was it couldn't compare, and it made the experience of his day-to-day life better, the quality of life better, and actually ended up being more frugal. The other thing that I like about it is he encourages people to kind of think systematically. So, for example, he would avoid having a gym membership, but when he was working, if he worked in a place that was three miles, let's say, from work, And so he would do that round trip 6-mile walk a day, and that would be his requisite daily activity. And that was a way for him to kind of stay fit and stay healthy, and get some movement in without having to purchase these additional things. And then buying food in bulk and whatever, all those different tactics that a lot of frugal writers and bloggers and so forth can talk about. You can integrate those and at the same time really build a good quality of life while retaining some flexibility for the future. So that's kind of my thought. I like that both of our selections were not really exactly authorship related, kind of more mindset, lifestyle, personal growth related. Yeah.
Good deal. Ready to jump to podcast? Oh no, we got a comment.
Yeah, I think so. Actually, what was the second question? Who would benefit from this? Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I think anybody who is struggling with their sense of I can't keep up, and it's just helpful to think about what you really need. Like for example, I know that you, Jordan, have written about kind of becoming more of a minimalist in terms of your possessions, selling off a number of the things that weren't important to you so that you can have these experiences of traveling, donating or selling, furniture and books and, all these different things. It's like, yeah, when you focus on the things that really matter, you can appreciate perhaps some of those handful of possessions that you retain a lot more, and realize that there are ways to have a very high quality of life that don't involve kind of casual consumption.
Yeah, and I think that's just a great lesson learned and more just instilled in me further through the Think and Grow Rich book. If you have a good determination on what your desires are, then you don't really need to worry about as many other things. I don't need all these different luxuries if they don't fit into my overall main goal. In some ways it gets, once you make that determination, it gets easier to go without some of these other comforts because they just don't fit in. So
yeah, it makes me think of the book, the movie adaptation. If anybody's seen it, it's pretty fun when Nicolas Cage plays two twin brothers, and
I have not heard of that.
Yeah, it's oh gosh. Anyway, yeah, it's cool. Meryl Streep's in it, I think, and the one of the characters says something to the effect of, I think people become obsessed with things because it makes the world manageable. It breaks the world into a small enough parcel. So when you have a handful of things that you're focusing on, it's like you can cut away all of those distractions. Like you said, when you decide, hey, this is my goal, like it becomes really easy to kind of quickly sort and separate. Like that's not important. That's not going to help me, with what I'm trying to accomplish. I don't even have to think about that. I don't have to think about, the intricacies of I don't know, water treatment systems or, different options, because I don't plan to own a pool, and like the mental clarity and ease of focus that affords can be really helpful.
Yep.
So, all right. But yeah, and then Jim has a couple of other comments. He's off to buy some Doc Martens to enjoy some comfortable attire, and he had a physical job at one time, and it's just 4 hours a day, but it was really helpful in staying fit, and you got to earn some income while doing it, which is very cool. So let's see. Let's jump on, Jordan. We've got podcasts. We can talk about some podcasts here. And it looks like I am number one. Hey, look at that. I am first up. So Jordan, I lay down on the table as my first offering, Writer on the Side by Hassan Osman. I welcome your questions.
We have talked about Hassan before. Good stuff.
Yes.
Why this one is specifically Writer on the Side for authors and entrepreneurs? Maybe more entrepreneurs, because maybe authors are just kind of obvious.
Yeah.
I'll do that. Why entrepreneurs for this one?
Yeah, no, I really like it. I think Hassan's book, one of the things that he focuses on that I appreciate quite a bit is he said, when you're writing your book, you want to write a really, really, really useful book. And in his case, this usually comes out to pretty short books. I mean, his target audience are, kind of busy managers and professionals who do have this authorship goal and are trying to work it in around a full-time full-time job, so you're a writer on the side. So you're trying to build that hustle and grow that. And it may not ever be, something that you do full-time, but it can be something that can help provide some additional income, some additional stability. If you ever change careers or lose your job, if you have something else going on, all of your eggs are not in this one basket. Or, you do. There's another author that we worked with recently, ALLi McGalliard, and his book was Care to Lead, I believe. Is that right, Jordan?
Yep, you got it.
Yep, Care to Lead. And, he works, I believe, in the energy industry. And he's looking to create a bridge to, once he's ready to retire, he wants to get into consulting. He wants to get into, building this other kind of second half to his story, second half to his career, and hold network, seminars and programs and do coaching, executive coaching, and that kind of thing. And so, a book is going to kind of help with that goal. So that could be another context in which you're writing on the side. You're building a bridge to your future. You don't necessarily have to have all of your eggs in this one basket now, but you kind of leverage whatever revenue and profit that you have from your primary income stream into something that can bear some fruit down the road.
Yep.
Cool.
And so who specifically, who would benefit the most?
Who would benefit the most? I would say, one of the things I like about him too is he's very explicit about the people that it's designed for. Obviously, it can help other people, but people who are managing a busy life and have a full-time income or a full-time job, but are looking to learn about the authorship business. That's kind of his target audience, and I think it's probably most helpful for that. But obviously, this is what we do as well at Archangel Inc., and I find it really, really useful. He's had some guests on there who, for example, he's had Dave Chesson on, and Dave will show up later in this stream, and to kind of talk about to talk about keywords and Amazon marketing. He's had a New York Times bestselling ghostwriter on there to kind of talk about the ghostwriting process and when it makes sense. He's had self-published author who went the non-Amazon route. This is one of his more recent podcasts, and who ended up earning something like $40,000 in the first month or two of being out there. And obviously it's pretty exceptional. And but the person kind of describes what they did. They started building their Twitter following a little while ago. They figured out what a good niche would be. I think they were writing about AWS, the Amazon Web Services, and just putting this book together, putting it at a higher price point, and and then what he's been continuing to do. So there are a number of different strategies and tactics I think that people are employing among his guests, and that's really kind of cool and fun to learn from, which would I imagine help even if you're a full-time author, not somebody just kind of struggling to find time to write, but somebody who's like, hey, what else can I do? How can I level up? How can I take my business to the next step? A podcast like this can be really helpful. So I like Hassan. Hassan, thank you for these this good work, and hope you continue to put out great content for us. And your turn, Jordan.
All right, I picked TED Talks Daily. It's one of the few podcasts that I'm subscribed to, but I think specifically. Maybe for authors and entrepreneurs, basically TED Talks Daily takes, I don't know if they cut, TED Talks are generally shorter talks. So I don't necessarily know how TED Talks Daily compares to TED Talks, because I don't subscribe to TED Talks. I do watch their videos on YouTube and stuff, but TED Talks Daily is they just give you daily podcasts about all kinds of different subjects. And I think the difference thing is they pick from different TED Talks across the world. I'm not 100% sure how it's exactly set up, but I do like it for the amount of different material you're going to get. I don't listen to every podcast every day, but there are some really interesting ones on there. So I definitely would think authors and entrepreneurs would enjoy checking that out, just because TED Talks is something that people talk about, and it's just that it's already vetted for you. It's it has that brand behind it of just being one step above, a little level above, and most not all, but most of the TED Talks daily on there are pretty good. They're at least very interesting and get you thinking. And they're anywhere from 7 to 15 minutes, so very easy to digest. If you're just cooking dinner one night, or if you're just walking over to the store, I mean, you can listen to one of these. So pretty cool.
Yeah, and you said is there a time limit to them? Are they typically like 10 minutes long or a half hour long, or any certain length, or does it vary based on?
I think it varies. I thought that they were generally 7 to 15 minutes, but I think the two most recent ones on there, actually looked today, were longer. I think there's there's two 45-minute ones, I think, are the latest ones, which seems very interesting. But I think they have to do with the latest issues surrounding the world. So I think they're just releasing that content to help, and it just happened to be longer. So
got it. Cool. So I think we covered that. We who they're best for, and how they help entrepreneurs. AWS, the question is Amazon Web Services, I believe, is what it's considered. Amazon Web Services, and you can see more on Hassan's website and podcast, the author that he had discussed kind of that content about. So all right, let's see. So we've got,
you're over to Ask ALLi or Ask ALLi.
Yeah.
Publishing Advice Podcast. I did not know they had a podcast, so I'm happy to hear about this.
So ALLi is the Alliance for Independent Authors, and I'm pleased to say that we are a partner member with ALLi. One of the things that I like that ALLi does that's really cool, they provide resources for authors who are independent and looking to build their business. But they also provide a kind of vetted resource guide. So they'll kind of ask some questions and see what the practices are of some of the providers out there. So you can kind of tell at a glance, like, hey, I've never heard of such and such designer before. Are they legit? Do they have any outstanding concerns? It's not exactly like a Better Business Bureau kind of thing, but a little bit like that. It's like, all right, these people we kind of know and trust and can stand behind. So if you're working with them, they're committed to the same goals that we are, and they have the same quality standards that we have. So that's pretty cool for helping to find providers. But they have a podcast, and it's pretty. I think they've got like a couple hundred episodes already, and I believe it's Orna Ross, who's one of the directors of the program, and Michael Ronn, who we're going to be highlighting elsewhere. But I would say that they focus on a number of different aspects of self-publishing. They kind of get into the weeds a little bit more. I would say that a lot of what we end up focusing on here is, I don't want to say intro level, but kind of big picture stuff. And we do get into the weeds a little bit, as like we have some previous live streams where we're getting into keyword research and category research and those kinds of things. But for example, they had on a recent call-in episode or write the host episode, they asked, hey, I have a book and it's been translated to another language, and the contract has worn up. I'd like to republish it. Using that translation, what concerns do I have? Who owns the rights, basically? And so that's a question, obviously, that not everybody is going to have to navigate themselves, but it was really useful. One of the things I learned in their reply was, in part, it will depend on the jurisdiction that you operate in. It'll also obviously depend on the particular contract that you have set up with your translator. Some of those contracts are set up that the rights are passed on to you. Others are set up so that some of the rights are passed on to you, but not all of them. And the translator retains some discretion in how their content is going to be used or reused or repackaged. So it's kind of good and helpful information like that. I would say they also do a lot of content that is helpful for fiction writers and storytellers. A lot of the folks that we end up working with are kind of business people who are looking to use their books to build a brand. Obviously, we do work with fiction authors and people who are just kind of serial content creators, and that is what they do. But I would say, they have things like writer tips and, just helping people to establish good practices and work on character development and, all those different kind of things. So they're cool. If you haven't or check them out before, browse through their back catalog. There's a number of different episodes. See if anything strikes your fancy, and definitely check them out. I think they are very credible and provide great resources.
Cool. Yep. Did you answer the 2 questions for that one specific?
Yeah, I'll summarize again. So who are they? Let's see, who are, why do I like them? For authors and entrepreneurs? They are very specifically focused on authors and entrepreneurs who benefit most from this. I would say anybody who's engaged or thinking about becoming engaged in independent writing, independent authorship. I would say it's especially useful for people who are already there and are kind of navigating it, because they're going to offer some a more granular, next level detail on approaches to take and things to strategies to incorporate, tools to utilize.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. We are on next, Jordan. I have that
Smart
sitting up
income.
Yeah. Well, I forgot to put up here is Ask ALLi, the advice podcast. So for anybody, and again, we'll have all these links down below in the show notes. Yep. But yeah, you're up, Jordan. Smart passive income. What's the scoop there?
Smart Passive Income is a blog and also podcast, mostly podcast by Pat Flynn. He started it a while back, probably I think 10 years ago-ish. Not 100% sure on time frame, but really, really, really good down-to-earth guy. And I think that's one of the reasons he has done so well is that it's obvious that he cares for his people. He puts a lot of effort into really giving good content and really good advice and just sharing and being real with people. I've always really liked his show. Authors and entrepreneurs, he does talk a lot about online business, and there's a lot of good marketing stuff you can get from him. He's not going to talk about specific, he's done some book launches and he talks about that on his podcast and his website, but for the most part, he's not going to talk about the ins and outs of publishing. But for entrepreneurs, he's a very good one to have on your list. I mean, I would say if you only had a few podcasts and only had enough time to listen to a few, definitely one I would recommend at least, attempting to get into. But yeah, so that answers the first one. Who would benefit most from his stuff? I think, 2 different levels. Anyone that is really interested in becoming an entrepreneur or leaving the 9-to-5 and discovering what passive income really is. What is that? What do I need to do to get into that? Some of his early podcasts are really, really good at giving that information really streamlined and bridging that gap between knowing nothing about it and coming away from listening to him and going, okay, I can do this. If other people can do this, why can't I? I can figure this out. There's things I'm passionate about. I can get help to make a website and all that and figure out those details.
Yeah.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, people that are in really, I guess, in deep with business and have had some of their own successes. That's really where he's at right now. So like I said, some of his early podcasts were really about how to get out there and start to build it. His podcasts lately, I don't listen to him as much, but they're really for people that are really far into it, that have, thousands and thousands of people on their email list. And he's talking to the people now that are at that super successful kind of I guess are trying to build on individual things and not look at things like big picture. So he does have a lot of good value, but I think 2 ends of the spectrum there, just depends on where you're at. I think he's definitely has had a lot of success. I think his podcast is one of the most successful podcasts ever. I'm not sure of the stats, but I wouldn't say that was crazy, that it was one of the most successful ever. And I don't think that success in any way has gone to his head. I don't see that. I still see him as real. But the people he's talking to, he knows that he's not just, talking to people that are just starting. He's talking to some people that really, need some really concrete advice. And it's all really good, but sometimes it does go a little bit too far and too in depth. And you're like, hey, I'm still trying to figure out, you're talking about like the past 4 episodes, like, I'm sorry, I'm not really super interested in this anymore.
Right. This one's not for me. Getting into the weeds a little bit.
Yep, I've heard some other people give the same feedback for stuff, but definitely one to listen to and, at least listen to the first stuff. And depending on where you're at, I mean, I think he has something for probably anyone that's in the entrepreneurial lifestyle.
Yeah, neat. Good deal. Well, thank you. So we've got we're almost an hour in, so we can kind of get through the YouTube channels that we mentioned, and you know, we don't spend a ton of time here. I enjoy kind of getting into some of these you know, these details. That's been fun. All right, so Jordan, you are up. Your first YouTube channel that you think people might want to check out.
This one, Rob Cubon, he's a friend of mine. We actually met the guy in real life. He's a really, really cool guy, lives in Thailand, in Chiang Mai, Thailand. He makes a lot of really, really good videos, specifically for online businesses, people who want to make content online. He has a lot of good videos on how to build online courses, how to get a book published on KDP, and all of that stuff. He's really into mostly now doing stuff with low content and low and no content books. He's had a lot of success with that in doing it himself and teaching other people how to get started with that. He has a lot of good stuff, you know, and the fact that he's just a nice guy too. Always happy to give shouts out to people that really, you know, that do really care. And he's had a lot of success, and he has a really good way of sharing stuff. So definitely recommend his YouTube.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. I don't, you've mentioned him to me before. I think actually when you're out in Thailand, but I haven't checked him out. So I'll do that. My first recommendation is author Level Up, Michael Ronn. And Michael's really cool. I learned about him through Dale Roberts, who I have deliberately not included here because we give him a shout out all the time. And anybody who watches this probably knows who Dale is. But Michael Ronn is, he's a little bit similar, I would say, to Hassan in that he has, you know, pretty active life. He has a full-time job. I think he's now completed, but for a while he was in the process of going to law school in the evenings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, has you know, family, wife, and child, and you know, and he had published. I think at this point now he's got probably close to 50 published titles, mostly fiction.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, he does some nonfiction as well, but his channel is really cool. I would say that he does have a lot of good content for fiction authors, but you know, some useful content for anybody kind of starting out and figuring their way into the self-publishing landscape. He kind of talks about his writing process, how he approaches things. One of the things that I really like and appreciate about him is his content is very polished, and I think, you know, he may have switched it up a little bit, but I think he works from a script. So the way Dale described it in the interview that I first discovered him in, it's almost more like a newscast, you know, than a, you know, just somebody kind of floating around and chit-chatting. Obviously we have a little bit more of that vibe, but I like the real professional approach that he takes to it. Cool. And yeah, he's just sharp. And I think if anybody is interested in any of the content or any of the topics that he covers, he's going to be very honest and lead you in a good direction. One of the things, for example, I remember he mentioned recently is like, look, you know, part of building your authorship brand is like, you definitely want to get your book out, but kind of dovetailing with what we've said before, you also want to have your secondary medium, you know, whether that's going to be kind of behind the mic, you know, like some sort of podcast or audio, something in front of the camera, like some sort of YouTube or live stream or whatever, or, you know, behind the keyboard. So some sort of active blog or something that you maintain, you know, all of those are going to help increase your profile and give people a chance to connect with you and engage with you. You know, it may take multiple opportunities for them to be interested really in even parting with, you know, just a few bucks of their dollars, you know, and a few bucks of their income. Thank you.
A few bucks of their dollars. That works.
Bucks of their dollars. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, a few bucks of their pesos, not
there you go.
Right. But anyway, he's yeah, having those other platforms can really help in building your profile. So I like him. Everything he does, I think, is really polished and put together, and he's just sharp. And everybody, feel free to check him out. Again, author Level Up. And Jordan, you're up at bat.
Yeah, you know, I kind of feel bad about sharing this one now. If I had known we weren't going to give Dale a shout out, I would have said, you know, we're not going to give Dale a shout out. We're not going to give Dave another shout out because they get too many shout outs. Yeah. But I mean, it's hard not to give shout outs to really good channels and people that are really putting really, you know, fantastic content out there. Dave Chesson over at Kindlepreneur has good stuff that he's just continuing to release. I know he updates his older posts as well when things change. Definitely a YouTube channel to check out as well, and just to stay in touch with what's happening in the author world. It's real good. So authors and entrepreneurs for sure. I mean, he definitely is more attuned to the authors than entrepreneurs. I think most of his stuff really is about how to succeed on Amazon. I know he has posts about how to succeed in other places as well, but the focus really is Amazon. So maybe entrepreneurs, not so much, but authors are really going to enjoy his stuff. And as far as who's going to benefit the most, I mean, I think definitely people that are first starting out in this space, and then also people that have very specific questions and want detailed YouTube videos and also blog posts on how to answer those questions. His long form blog posts are very, very good, very, very thoughtful and very, very well put together. And I enjoy reading them. And he has a lot of tools on his website too that we have recommended before that no one else, I mean, other people have similar type things, but he just has some really good, they're the top of the line as far as tools go. We talked about before Publisher Rocket. I mean, there's really no other publishing tool out there that gets mentioned as much as a Publisher Rocket, because, and formerly KDP Rocket. Publisher Rocket is just great. We did a video on our YouTube channel here where I use that. Definitely one to check out, but it's a really good program and he just makes quality stuff. Definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, he's really thorough, really careful, attentive, detailed. I believe his background in his previous life was working in either the military or defense, and there's there's an expression I remember. I think it was a Navyman telling me, he's like, this throughout the military. If you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. And with that level of preparedness, that's kind of expected. That very much kind of comes through. That's what I think of when I think of Dave. That makes perfect sense. Like, just really careful. As you've mentioned before, if there's an issue with something, he's often on the front line of support. Like, hey, this weird thing happened when I was using Publisher Rocket. Like, what can I do? And then oftentimes it's him reaching back out. Hey, what's going on? Let me know. Let's sort this out. And here we've just updated this and we fixed that. So just really attentive and much appreciated. All of the
Rob, it was 10 minutes later once when I had a slight issue with it, and I was like, is this my issue or is what's happening here? Right. 10 minutes. He emailed me back and said, we're having troubles, we're working on it. I'm like, well, cool. I'm not in a rush, it's whatever. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't me being stupid.
Right.
Help me out. Like, I hate sending a contact form, but just to make sure I'm not doing anything wrong. But he's very much in exactly what you were just saying. That level of preparedness is it's inspiring, and it's also just good to see people who are at that level, and thinking about ways to emulate that is just it's cool. It's good. Yeah.
I agree. So cool. Right on. Let's move on. And the last YouTube channel that I recommend here is Toastmasters International. And I know Toastmasters is a group that you and I both have some experience with, Jordan. I think we may have talked about it on previous live streams, if not elsewhere on our channels. And it is a public speaking and leadership and development kind of organization. There is a general template to the way that these programs are run, or these group meetings are run, and they meet literally all over the world. I've had people in my local Toastmasters, when I was more actively involved in it, say, I went over to a Toastmasters event in, in Indiana or in California or over in, Chiang Mai, and and they were run basically the same way. And so it's just I find it really helpful in learning to communicate more effectively. And then the way that the organization is set up, it gives you a chance to kind of take on additional responsibilities and be a point person for different things that need to happen. You get a little bit of a sense of what's involved in running an organization, especially at the day-to-day level. You're like, okay, who's going to print out the agenda for the meetings? Who's going to make sure to have that? Who's going to set up the tables so that we're prepared to speak? Who's going to bring out the podium? Do we need a microphone? Little things like that. To other things that are kind of more soft skills. Okay, where's Jordan on his track? How many speeches has he done? Does he need encouragement? Hey, let's get you on the schedule. Just kind of paying attention to all of these different things. So in some ways, this YouTube channel is kind of an endorsement of the organization. Right now, with the kind of stay in place orders, some of these groups are meeting digitally. I think that is happening. But at some point, I'm sure they'll be meeting in person again. And I just find it really helpful. The channel itself does have a number of good videos from people, I mean, literally from all over the world, talking about ways that it's helped improve their communication, their effectiveness in their businesses or in their personal lives. And it's a fun group if you're at all interested in that side of your authorship business or your entrepreneurship business, that kind of how to win friends and influence people, how to communicate more effectively, that whole arena. I think Toastmasters is a really cool organization, and we're very fortunate that in many cities there are multiple groups. So you can try different ones out, see if you jive with one more than the other, and or one that fits your schedule better, and make that a part of your your development and growth path.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add with that, Rob, is I think it's huge for any author. I mean, as an author, even if you aren't going to go and do speaking engagements, you're still going to get people that come up to you and say, "Hey, what are you working on? Hey, what are you writing? What's your next project?" Right. And Toastmasters for me was just I like the thing of Toastmasters the most about that we do these in the beginning. They do these really short, you give 1 to 2 minute speeches where someone asks you a random question. And basically it's having that preparedness of having an answer ready, having some stories kind of floating around in your head if people do ask you these questions. I mean, that was one of my biggest difficulties is people say, "Hey, Jordan, what are you working on?" And I would freeze every time and never know what to say. Right. And just, it was really helpful for me to just start thinking about, okay, when someone asks you a question, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can kind of have some stories going on in your head that you don't want to repeat yourself, but you don't need to give them a blank stare, when they're just trying to be nice and asking you a question. There are things you can say. And just like I was saying earlier with the how to win friends and influence people that you mentioned as well, it just gives you those tactics. Just it really helps you just gain that self-awareness in a really positive atmosphere. So I mean, that was a double plug for Toastmasters in general. Okay. I'll have to check out the YouTube page as well, but good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were talking, I thought about the idea of the elevator pitch, right? So you, yes. when you're describing your business or your book or something, you want to have some idea in your back pocket that you can kind of lay out and make available for people. And if they're interested, then they can, ask more. Oh, that sounds really cool. Tell me more about that. Or if they're not, it's short and it's concise and it's pithy, and it gives people a chance to kind of respectfully, hey, that's maybe not my cup of tea, and move on. Again, when you're trying to win friends and influence people, one of the ways not to do it is to force them to listen to 2.5 minutes, with them zoning out and having to kind of politely nod while you drone on about something that they have no familiarity with and no desire to learn more about. So having something, like you said, in your back pocket, ready to kind of lay out and, offer a first volley of engagement and something that's kind of fun and interesting can be cultivated through Toastmasters groups. And big fan of that. So cool deal. All right, wrapping up. Was there anything else that you wanted to say before we wrap up here?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, cool. So wrapping up. We would love to hear from you. Part of the spirit of this video here today, this live stream, was what resources do you enjoy? What content is out there? All of us are kind of in this boat where we're looking to learn and grow. And again, maybe probably a lot of us have some extra free time on our hands and are trying to engage with new things and learn a little bit more. So we would love to hear from you in the comments down below. Even after this has been made available for replay, and who else has had a positive impact on your writing business? Definitely reach out to us, and recommendations are certainly welcome. And if it's helpful to put it in that context that we offered before, which is, why do you like this selection for authors and entrepreneurs and who would benefit most from them? Feel free to do that as a framing device, or you can just say, hey, check out such and such channel. It's really cool. And we'd love to hear from you. So I think that's that's all I've got for now. Jordan, is there anything else that you wanted to share or contribute before we wrap up here?
Nope, I'm good. Good deal. Enjoyed this one.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it, and have a great rest of your evening, everybody. And we'll see you next time.